So we get asked this all the time about should we go to train in Spain, and I'm here with Nikhil Mohindra, who has recently come back from Alicante and having spent some time there training. So in today's episode we're going to talk about the benefits of training in Spain and why it's really good for people to do it, but also some of the things that they need to consider. And we're going to do underrated, overrated, which is obviously the highlight of the episode, and then we'll finish with a community question. So, Nikhil, great to have you here. I think the last time we sat down and had a conversation like this was in the World Championships in Dubai, and since then you've gone out to Spain, to Alicante, to do some training. So, yeah, how's that gone?
Well, it's going amazing at the moment, and I made that decision after we had our conversation at the World Champs, because being there and realising the level of all the other developing countries, for example, you have like France have always been at the top, but then you have Sweden, who is amazing. Then you have these upcoming countries like Finland, Denmark, and their level is improving so much. And I felt like I need to make this move. So about a week after the World Champs, I moved out. Managed to get everything sorted through the hard process of obtaining a visa, finding a place to stay. And yeah, at the moment I'm really enjoying it. It's really thorough, the training about 4 hours of paddle a day, 3 to 4 hours of paddle a day, doing about an hour of physical training in the gym, and then also a bit of recovery.
I mean, it was really apparent, wasn't it, in Dubai, that the level was so strong in those other countries. And I remember having that conversation when we were on our way back to the UK, thinking, how on earth are we going to train at that level? How are we going to reach the level of Portugal, as an example, when we're in the UK? We don't have a lot of players, we don't have a lot of facilities, particularly now we're in the middle of winter. Like, you know, how are we gonna be training? And so I think, you know, for us in our situation here in the UK, it's a good option, right, to organise training there and stay for a period of time, compete in the tournaments. How easy was it? And I know that you probably already had some contacts, but how easy was it to slot into or to find a training regime there in Spain?
Well, fortunately for me, I did have a contact out there which helped me organise it. But to slot in, so I'm training at 2 places at the moment. One of them is the Bella Paddle Centre in Alicante, and then also at Paddle AN, and that's with Jordan Munoz. So training at these places is absolutely fantastic. They've made me feel really welcome. I've got a mix of training, so some basket training and also some group training with high-level Spanish players. And I feel like they've really welcomed me, and I feel that's a really typical Spanish thing to do, is they're welcoming, and yeah, I'm enjoying it at the moment.
I think that's also common for all levels as well. Like, we get a lot of beginner or intermediate players that want to go to Spain and experience the training in Spain, and actually I think they take that approach at a lot of clubs. You know, whatever your level, they are happy to put you into a group and to find people to play with. And I think one of the major advantages of going to Spain is the number of players. You know, here there's a handful of us that we could have a good match with, whereas there in Alicante, and Alicante is not one of the major paddle, it's not like a Madrid or a Barcelona or even Valencia, but it still has so many players that you can train with.
No, exactly. Like, as you said, in England or in London more specifically, maybe, this is not even an exaggeration, maybe we have 8 players or even less. So we can.
That's generous, I would say.
Yeah, that we can call up for a game, and you go to Alicante, and there's people everywhere. I'm not even joking. You see people coming out the supermarket with a paddle bag on. You see people doing anything like normal day-to-day life, and they've got a paddle bag on. It's just so natural for them. And the types of people I've played against some vets who, although they lack mobility, for example, they make up with it with the experience with the hand-eye coordination. Then I also played against 15, 16-year-olds, and they, of course, they're coming up, but they're learning the new style of paddle. It's not like the old style of paddle, and it's
the new aggressive style of physical, and
exactly.
And when you talk about competing, I think for me, one of the best reasons for like yourself or for an up and coming player to go to Spain is the competition. I mean, they have such a good tournament structure in their regions, don't they? So you're in that Alicante Murcia region, right? Like,
Yeah.
and you can enter a tournament almost every week and play high level every week, right?
Exactly. Every week there's at least a couple of high-level tournaments, which, if we're lucky, we might get one a year in England where everyone's flying over. But it's apparent there that is such a important aspect to growing the game and why their level is so high.
And also, I think people don't appreciate the number of good players out there. Like they see World Padel Tour, and you maybe watch World Padel Tour from quarterfinals or last 16 onwards, but before that you've got the Previa, and then you've got pre-Previa, and you've got the guys in these regions that are amazing players that don't quite make it to Previa. So you've got, I mean, thousands of players in and around Spain that you could train with, but also compete against.
Absolutely. I mean, in England, I normally win the tournaments here, and then I go to Spain and I can't win the first round of qualifying. It's absolutely amazing, the level there, and I don't think everyone says, yeah, Spain has a good level, Spain has a great level, but at all ages, not even just the prime age of 25 to 35, it's like everyone there.
The vets level is so strong, so the older age groups, and they have the similar tournament structure for the older players as well, and they also have it for the youngsters, and we, you know, through social media, we have quite a lot of younger players that are wanting to come up in whichever country it might be, you know, Sweden, Finland, Belgium, Holland, UK, wherever it might be. And I think that competition, or that level of competition, is really good to experience that almost as soon as possible, really.
No, yeah, exactly right. I mean, the younger you get into competition, the better, and you just get more used to it. And it's totally different. Like, in training, you could, no exaggeration, you could hit bandecas like the top players in the world because you know you're waiting for it. But it's that change when you're going into the match and you're having to move back from that volley and you're not waiting in the position you've just been hitting baskets for. So, yeah.
And you're in a regional tournament with a few hundred fighters, like they're there all to win. You know, there's no pushovers.
No, exactly. Like playing in the tournament last week, it's pretty brutal. No one was giving you an inch or anything. So
yeah. And so how was because obviously you mentioned you're training at 2 different clubs. You said the competition is fantastic, lots of good players. What's the structure like at these at these clubs? You know, how are you finding the organisation and the facilities and everything that goes in around that?
Sure. So for me, I've split it in a way that in the mornings I'm doing technical sessions with Jordi Munoz, one of the ex-best players in the world. So he'll be tweaking my bandeja, for example, turning the racket or whatever. And then I would go in the evening to train with a group of players who are all around my age, similar age, and we'll be doing match play drills and kind of defending versus attacking, and that's more like a match play scenario. And then at Bella, it's all kind of baskets. We're sparring against some of the best players in the world. I'm very fortunate to be sparring against them.
I feel like I've been to the Bella once. I haven't been to Geordie's, but I feel like it's a kind of recreational club, right? Like if you go, all the courts are recreational players. I haven't seen a lot of like high level players, but the facility is fantastic. It's, you know, I think, is it 10, 11 courts?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
A great gym and spa next to it, and the setup is great. And I think, you know, it sounds like you're getting a combination there, and I think it's a good indication of really also what the coaching is like. I mean, but you know, the Spanish coaches are famous for baskets, so you know, I'm sure you're getting a lot of those. How are you finding the different training methods?
Well, I'm quite fortunate to have had quite a few coaches while I've been playing paddle for a few years, but you can really tell the difference. For example, with the coaches I have at the moment, the small differences that they spot that I don't think anyone else would spot when I've been to, for example, Holland and had a coach there, or Sweden. You can tell these guys have been playing in Spain. These coaches, you can tell they've been playing for a long, long time by the way they explain things to you. Sometimes, of course, it's tough with the language barrier, but the way they demonstrate it to you, I think it's the difference of why Spain's so much better. Also, they've been playing a lot longer, but those small tweaks really, really make a difference.
And how important is the language barrier? And, you know, because I know there are coaches where you go and they don't speak a word of English, and that then communication is very, very difficult. Difficult for you to understand. But then there's some that, you know, like Geordie, for example, his English is decent and he can explain, you know, what he's trying to get across. But how important is it that you find a coach that speaks English?
Of course, I think it is important in a way. If you, I feel I understand paddle quite a lot in a way to hit a shot, not to the level of course the professionals, but the language barrier is obviously quite a big problem at the moment. They're having to explain it to the English players and then spend another 2 minutes explaining it to me, so it does take up a big chunk of the session trying to demonstrate and explain the drills we're trying to do. But I think there's an advantage as well for me personally. I want to learn Spanish, so I feel
that's a good way to do it. Right?
Yeah, I don't have an option, so yeah, it's obviously tough, but I don't think there's a way around it. When you want to train with the best, you've got to adapt to them.
Yeah, so. And so what would you say to players that are maybe in their country, because you know this is listened by people around the world and they want to improve? Do they need to go to Spain in order to commit? And I'm talking a kind of recreational but competitive level. So they're probably playing in their local club competitions or regions. Do they need to go to Spain?
I feel it's dependent on your aspirations in paddle. If you're wanting to go to the next level, if you're wanting to compete on an international tournament and international level, then I think it's a necessary step, because everyone there in the paddle community has a good level, depending on where you go in Spain. But if you're more playing on a recreational level, then yes, it's good to go for a week to go and experience the new level. But a lot of it in Spain is basket feedings, which I feel you can achieve in your hometown. But
I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, I think it's good. It would be good to go to experience and to see all the level and to see all the players and almost submerge yourself in a paddle environment. But I also feel like the coaching there, like you say, it's baskets, but it's, you know, you can find some good coaches there, and you know, if you know who to look for and where they are, you can actually find someone that's going to make a big difference to your game. But you can also end up essentially, you know, with a ball machine and you know, and do the same thing in your own club, in your own location. So I think it's almost treating it as a learning experience, and then going back to whichever country and whichever club you're in and saying, right, here's how I want to adapt. Because for me, the massive benefit of going to Spain for yourself and Tom is also there, is to like play high level competition, have lots of players to play against, and you know, we haven't even talked about it, but it's cheap compared to a lot of countries. So definitely. You know, these sessions are cheap, court rentals are cheap, the equipment is cheaper, and so you know, you can go and get all of that paddle experience under your belt, and very soon, you know, other countries will have coaches at, or if not above that level soon anyway, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, for example, in London here, we're paying, you can pay up to like £85 or £90 just for a game for 4 of you, and you go to Spain and I'm training with some of the world's best, and I'm paying a third of that, and for the court rental, for the lesson, and the prices in Spain definitely are a big advantage.
So how would you advise someone if they want to go and train in Spain, and again we'll assume they're competitive but a recreational player, maybe an intermediate level for example, how should they go about like setting up this training in Spain? What should they look for? I put you on the spot there, so you probably weren't planning for that.
Well, I feel they should look for a mix of match play and baskets. For example, experience, like I mentioned before, experience the different types of players, play against players you've never played against before, and also different techniques, different styles, because yes, it's great playing against your friends every week, but you know, if the ball goes there, I know what they're going to do with it. So I feel like if you do make the trip, definitely look to incorporate match play and some basket play into your game.
So I think if we break that down as a process, it's almost find a city that you want to go to, probably, and Madrid, Barcelona are the two top paddle locations. You've then got Valencia, and you've got like the coast, like Marbella area. Then you've got Alicante as well. And I mean, to be honest, the majority of big cities in Spain will have some kind of academies and set up. So identify probably where you want to go, and then look at the clubs in that area. And a good indication is if they've got a website or an Instagram page or something like that has a bit of English on it. That's a help, because if you are going and you don't speak fluent Spanish, you need at least some support with the English side. And then going to the representative, whoever that might be. And some of these academies have, international clinics specifically set up for those that want to come. And others, it might just be a question of speaking to the head coach and seeing if you can arrange it. And then you want to plan your session with a mix of, like you say, match play, some coach training time, and with different people, like you say. I mean, that's so key.
Yeah, no, exactly what you said. Find a place where you like. And for me, a big thing is being able to look at them on social medias and looking at proof that what they've done, who they've had there, or what their kind of program is. For me, that's very important. Otherwise, if they didn't have any sort of thing I could like associate myself with, or similarities on Instagram, on Facebook, I don't think I would find it comfortable going there just because I know nothing about it. So,
I think for you as well, it's slightly different. You're looking for people that have experience training World Padel Tour players or high level players. I think for the majority, it's probably about looking at good organisers, which is really difficult. And I've done many trips to Spain, and some have been good and some have been very much like they change the court times at the last minute, the coach turns up late, they don't come with the right equipment, they come to the wrong court. This stuff for me personally is really, really important. I'm someone who likes organisation, and so you can already tell that once you start communicating with the club, and if they start changing price or dates or days or coaches, it immediately is a sign that probably when you get there it's going to be a bit disorganised, right?
Yeah, and then it affects your schedule for the week or the day, and
it's frustrating, really, isn't it? But all of that you can organise from afar. Like the beauty now is you can organise that through Instagram Messenger, for example, or whatever you want. And so let's talk about overrated, underrated. So if I'm a player that wants to go out and train in Spain, what would you say is overrated? Or let's start with underrated. Let's start with the positive first. What's underrated about Spain that you think, wow, that's awesome?
For me, is definitely the costs of everything, like the equipment and also the coaching fees and the club fees. I think that's so beneficial for a customer going there compared to other European countries such as us, England or Sweden, where the prices are quite high, but it's a lot more affordable there, and you get to train with the world's best or at the world's most experienced clubs where they've had a lot of players there. I think that's one of the best things.
And it ties in with accessibility as well, right? Like, now whatever it is, if you want to book a court or a lesson or even order a pair of shoes or a racket, for us now, like, it's not so easy. There will be probably a waiting list for the coach, or there'll be the court is booked up, but in Spain it feels like you drive down the road and there's like a paddle club every kilometre, and most of them have a shop which has lots of equipment, so you can go in and immediately have access to courts, coaches, equipment. Like that's one of the things I love about going to Spain is having all of that like on your doorstep, essentially.
So many options for you to play and get so much equipment everywhere in Spain. So definitely one of the best things.
And what would be your overrated? I suppose that when we say overrated, it's something that people should almost really consider when they're making the booking or they're planning. Like what is one thing that loads of people think is going to be great that they really need to consider carefully?
I think for me, the biggest difference was the actual quality or surrounding of the majority of clubs in Spain, because in England we don't have that many clubs, but I've been to, for example, again Sweden or any like Holland, and the clubs are of such a fantastic standard and they're exceptional, amazing facilities, got a really nice cafe, high roofs, great quality courts. Whereas in Spain, of course, it's been around a lot longer, so perhaps more due to wear and tear, but it's a lot more closed in, really like, just like kind of...
It's kind of the bare bones, isn't it?
Exactly,
you mean
yeah.
they've got courts there, and I know exactly what you mean. They'll have a kind of bog stand and change room or toilet, and then it'll have like a coffee machine or a vending machine, and that'll be it. Like it's
there's not much to a social aspect in the majority of the clubs. It's you play your game and you're out.
Yeah,
Whereas,
which is weird, isn't it? Because the Spanish are so sociable, like, you know, and like we're not talking about all clubs, because we know some clubs have, you know, little tapas evenings, and you go and you have a beer and you play, and then, which is fantastic. But generally speaking, it is like that, isn't it? And it's it's funny looking in Sweden. It was also a bit like that in Sweden, but partly because of that boom through COVID, that everyone just put in clubs without thinking about the surroundings, and now that they're obviously having to reconsider. But yeah, for me, alongside that is as overrated is the organisation. In my mind, and especially from a tennis background of being involved with federations in tennis and kind of coaching on ATP and WTA tours, you expect when you go to Spain that you're going to see like the highest level of professionalism when it comes to, you know, academies and the organisation around it. And that was, for me, really surprising to go, and, you know, the setup is not as you would expect. And I think if you're going to Spain or you're considering going to Spain, you have to be really like on it with, you know, this is when I'm playing on this day, this is where I'm going, this is who I'm doing it with, and you need to be the organiser, because I feel like the academies and the clubs generally, and this is a generalisation, again, it's not all clubs, there are some very good ones in Spain, but generally speaking, it's all a little bit like last minute, isn't it? And you know, we'll sort that out for you, but it's not urgent. No,
exactly, so you just got to make sure to have yourself organised before it starts getting muddled up, and you start losing out on sessions or whatever. Yeah. And
so we'll finish with a question from our community, and I've got this question in my mind because I get asked it all the time, is like, I want to go to Spain, where should I go? Oof, yeah, there you go. If you could just answer that quickly.
Well, as mentioned earlier, I feel like find a place that you like, as you mentioned. And for me, I've always gone to either Madrid or Barcelona or Alicante. So there's 3 places for me.
But I think, I'm going to interrupt you there, sorry, but it's like, I think that's important to say, like, don't always go back to the same place. Like, if you'd always just gone to Alicante, you wouldn't have experienced in Madrid or Barcelona. And I feel like when you're choosing a place, you will get so much experience from going to one city and one club, and or several in one city, and then going to another in another city. And I feel like if you're going, like we said earlier, for the experience of seeing what, you know, the situation, the community is like, and you want to submerge yourself, then I actually think it's quite good to go, you know, 4 days here and then 4 days here, and, you know, and see what it's like, because you're talking about doing 2 clubs that are near each other in Alicante, and your experience from both is completely different. So I think that's important, you know, but like as an aspect to when people do this, choose a city and find a few different academies and experience your time in them.
Yeah, absolutely. Then you can find the best of all the worlds that you go to. So perhaps go to different clubs in an area, or like you said, spend a few days here, a few days there, to really find out what you like, because everyone obviously have different preferences. So I think that's a good way.
And just to finish, you'll be going back probably at the start of the new year. What are your short-term goals for going back? Like, what are you focusing on?
So the short-term goals,
and I'm not talking technique, but more like, you know, within your paddle.
Sure. So as in my skills, or
like or competitions, or what do you want? What do you want your game? Like, what transformation do you want your game to have?
So I think what I lack the most is my physicality. So I definitely want to work on my physical attributes, such as my speed and my strength. I feel like if I add a little bit of strength to my game, it'll bring my level up a lot, and so I can maintain my position in the Great Britain team. And also travel and play a lot more FIPs in the 2023 season, because in the previous year I played perhaps 2 or 3, and of course that shows in the World Championships when you're playing against these guys who are playing in and out every week. So I've got to be able to travel and play as many FIPs as possible. That's my main goal, and not just training, because you can train and be the best player in training, but you convert that into a competition, it's a whole different ball game, because everything changes, as I mentioned earlier. So yeah, got to play a lot more competition next year.
Perfect. Well, Nikhil, as always, an absolute pleasure.
No, thanks for having me.